Hello, I want to immigrate. Amelia stood at the window, handing all the prepared documents to the staff member on the other side. Quickly, the staff member stamped the documents she had submitted and then pulled out another form to give to her. Ma'am. The procedures will be completed in 15 days. Please wait patiently. Amelia nodded and turned to walk out the door, only to suddenly hear the hushed murmurs of the staff behind her. Did I see that right, Mrs. Quincy is immigrating? Did she have a fight with Mr. Marshall? Even if they had a fight, it shouldn't be this serious, right? After all, Mr. Marshall is famously a doting husband. What could have happened to make Mrs. Quincy so resolute? Exactly 5 years ago, Mr. Marshall held a globally sensational wedding for Mrs. Quincy. Even someone like me who doesn't go online heard about it. 3 years ago, Mrs. Quincy was in a car accident, and the blood bank was running low. Mr. Marshall defied everyone's objections and donated over half of his own blood to snatch her back from the jaws of death. A year ago, Mrs. Quincy disappeared for just an hour, and Mr. Marshall mobilized all media to search for her worldwide. Now, Mrs. Quincy is leaving like this behind his back. He's going to go crazy. Listening to the chatter around her, Amelia pursed her lips, the self-mockery in her eyes growing deeper. Yes, everyone knew Marshall loved her deeply. It was common knowledge in their circle that Marshall, the CEO of the Quincy Group, was ruthless and decisive in business, with an equally notorious personal life, cold, detached, and famously distant from women, insisting they stay at least 3 meters away. Until that banquet, when he met Amelia, he fell in love with her at first sight and began pursuing her madly, showering her with mansions, luxury cars, and jewelry without hesitation. Fireworks lit up the sky for 3 days and nights, proclaiming his love to the world. When she casually mentioned craving chestnut cakes that had been discontinued for years, he braved a snowstorm late at night, driving through 3 cities, drenched to the bone, only to present her with the still warm pastries. What truly made her decide to accept him was the day her parents died in a car accident. Despite being in a distant city, he chose to abandon a billion-dollar deal just to rush back to her. When he finally reached her, disheveled and with bloodshot eyes, he pulled her into his arms, his heart aching for her. Amelia, sweetheart, you still have me. I'll always be by your side. Amelia felt her heart skip a beat as she saw the deep affection in his eyes. It's him. Amelia silently told herself in her heart, yet this very person, who had only her in his heart, succumbed to temptation 3 months ago and became entangled with the sister of his best friend, who was staying at their home. The traces of their affair were everywhere, on the sofa in the villa, in the kitchen, and on the bed. Marshall thought he had hidden it well, but he forgot that walls have ears. At the moment she learned the truth, she felt pain, despair, and doubt, but in the end, she accepted the heartbreaking reality and decided to leave for good. The Quincy family has a 3-generation military background, so no member of the Quincy family is allowed to travel abroad, including Marshall. If she leaves the country, he'll never find her again in this lifetime. Amelia carefully put away the immigration documents in her hand, hailed a taxi, and headed towards Riverside Gardens. As soon as she stepped into Quincy's villa, the scent of heather rushed straight to her nose. The 2 decorating the wall immediately turned to look at her upon hearing the movement. Marshall froze for a moment, then his eyes instantly softened as he walked over to hold her hand. Sweetheart, why are you dressed so lightly? Aren't you cold? Didn't you say you were going out with your girlfriends? How come you're back so soon? I was still preparing a surprise for you. Surprise? Amelia looked up at Marshall, but her gaze involuntarily lingered on his neck. There, a large patch of hickeys was visible. Her eyelashes trembled slightly as she struggled to suppress the stabbing pain in her heart. Seeing she didn't respond, the nearby Diana giggled and walked over. Amelia, Marshall really loves you so much, even making such a grand celebration for your first meeting anniversary. Diana paused deliberately, then pointed at the mountain of gifts piled on the nearby sofa. Look, all these are Marshall's gifts prepared for you. Amelia followed Diana's gaze, only to first notice the spreading wet stain beneath the pile of gifts. In that instant, she felt as if struck by lightning. The scent upon entering and the present stain now completely confirmed the truth she had just guessed. Love her. Marshall's so-called love for her was to prepare gifts while simultaneously making love with Diana on the couch, even passionately enough to soak a large section of it. The pain of being torn apart from the inside is nothing compared to this. Marshall didn't notice Amelia's unusual behavior. simply fastening the pre-prepared necklace around her neck with a voice so tender it could drown one in sweetness. Sweetheart, happy anniversary of our first meeting. I've also prepared a candlelit dinner. Amelia trembled all over and shook her head. I won't eat. I don't feel well. Now, every second spent with Marshall is torture for her. She had said it from the beginning. She had emotional purity standards and couldn't accept flaws. Either don't provoke her at all, or if you do, why betray her in the end? Marshall heard her say she wasn't feeling well and immediately went into high alert. First, he called several private doctors to examine her. Even after the checkup showed no issues, he still wasn't reassured. He sent an assistant to buy a pile of supplements to nourish her energy and blood, then personally made her a cup of warm milk and coaxed her to sleep. After struggling for 4 or 5 hours, Amelia was finally coaxed to sleep by him, late at night. Amelia suddenly woke up thirsty and was about to go out to get water, but the moment she opened the door, her entire body froze in place. The door to the next room was wide open, and the bright moonlight through the window revealed 2 naked figures entangled on the bed. That necklace today was worth hundreds of millions, and no matter how much I begged, you wouldn't give it to me. Amelia didn't have to do anything. Yet you eagerly presented all the finest things to her, after the passion. Diana still wrapped her legs around his waist, her voice dripping with jealousy. Marshall frowned, pulled away, and sat on the edge of the bed to light a cigarette. Have you forgotten your place? I've said I only love Amelia. If you want to maintain this kind of relationship with me, it has to be in secret. If she finds out, you know what will happen. Diana turned pale, then got up and hugged him from behind with her naked body, saying pitifully, I know you love Amelia, but I love you too. Can't I just be a little jealous? Marshall didn't say anything, just bent down and took out a necklace from the drawer. The same style as Amelia's but in a different color. Don't act so pitiful. I bought you one too, but you can only wear it in secret. If she finds out, our relationship ends immediately. Diana beamed with joy and immediately held the necklace against her neck, which was covered in purple love bites. Thank you, Marshall. I knew you still cared about me, but are you really so afraid of Amelia leaving? Without the slightest hesitation, he replied, yes, I can't live without her. If she leaves, I'll go mad. As soon as the words left his mouth, he pinned her down again, commencing another round of passion. The bed creaked loudly from his movements, and the continuous moans of Diana reached her ears, while Amelia stood in the distance, tears streaming down her face, with reddened eyes. She stared at Marshall's face in the wedding photo on the wall. Marshall, in 15 days, I'll be waiting for you to lose it. Early in the morning, Amelia was startled awake by a commotion. She pushed open the door and only then saw, in the garden of the neighboring villa, a woman with an exhausted face tightly gripping the clothes of the man before her, screaming in anguish, I've loved you for a full 10 years and even bore you several children. You promised to love me forever when we got married, and now, just a few years later, you dare to secretly keep a mistress behind my back. Although it was early morning, many people had already risen and were strolling around the lake, just in time to hear such shocking news. As more and more people gathered in the villa area, the man, a figure of some standing, immediately changed his expression, grabbing the woman and pulling her into the villa. What are you making a scene for? I've told you many times, there isn't a man in this world who doesn't stray. Amelia was staring blankly when a warm hand suddenly covered her ears gently from behind. Amelia, don't listen to such foul language. Amelia didn't turn around, only whispering softly, tell me, do all men change their hearts? Marshall stiffened, turning the person before him to face himself, his eyes filled with seriousness. I can't speak for others, but I won't. Amelia, I'll only love you in this lifetime. You'll only love me in this lifetime. But a lifetime is so long. Marshall gently embraced her, his warm breath brushing against her ear. Life is so long, yet all I want is you. Amelia finally let out a laugh, though it carried a hint of bitterness. But what if? What if you betray me? If I ever betray you, may I be struck by lightning and die a wretched death. Knowing the full truth, hearing these words pierced her heart with unbearable pain. Marshall, how dare you make such a vicious oath? Aren't you afraid it might actually come true? Marshall chuckled softly. It won't, because no one knows better than I do how much I love you. If you don't believe me, I'll cut out my heart to show you. If you still don't believe me, I'll give you my entire life. Could he really give her his entire life? Then why couldn't he even control his lower half? His body still carried the scent of another woman's passion. Yet his lips whispered the sweetest nothings to her. Amelia, Marshall, what are you doing? A voice suddenly rang out from the doorway, shattering the calm. Turning around, they saw Diana leaning against the doorframe, dressed in a strapless red gown. The next moment, Amelia clearly felt Marshall's body stiffen slightly. The next second, he frowned. Isn't today the weekend? Where are you going dressed like that? His tone didn't sound like a brother's concern for his sister, but more like a husband questioning his wife about to go out, even jealous of how charmingly she was dressed. Hearing the jealousy in his voice, Diana smiled coyly. Our company is hosting a social mixer. I'm going to scout for a boyfriend, and I won't be coming back tonight. Hearing this, Marshall's expression suddenly changed, while Diana's smile grew even brighter. By the way, Amelia, do you have any plans for today? Marshall finally snapped back to reality and took Amelia's hand, saying, your sister-in-law and I are going back to the old house today. Diana smiled, leaving behind a give them my regards before turning to leave. Half an hour later, Marshall drove Amelia to the old house. Quincy's parents never really liked Amelia as their daughter-in-law. The elderly couple felt their once promising son had been ruined by her, turning into a lovesick fool who nearly lost his life. Adding to that, the couple had no children after years of marriage. So every meeting was met with cold stares and disapproval. Marshall felt sorry for him and always tried to minimize contact. But this time, news came from the old house that Marshall's mom had been in poor health recently. He had no choice but to take Amelia back for a visit. As soon as they entered, Marshall's dad and Marshall's mom, who had been chatting and laughing, suddenly turned cold. Marshall could see they were giving Amelia the cold shoulder and instantly lost his temper. If you keep this up, Amelia and I won't come back again. At these words, Marshall's dad slammed the table in anger. How dare you? What kind of talk is this? Are you abandoning your parents for a woman? Marshall held Amelia's hand, refusing to back down. I've said that Amelia is the love of my life. I'm afraid even raising my voice at her might disturb her. Treating her like this, are you trying to break your son's heart? If this happens again, I'll consider myself without a family from now on. No one expected Marshall to be so resolute. The atmosphere in the living room instantly turned deathly silent. Yet, Amelia felt not a trace of emotion as she looked at the man who was now fiercely defending her. Seeing that her son was serious, Marshall's mom relented. All right, let's eat first. At the dining table, the only sounds were the clinking of utensils and the occasional cold snort from Marshall's mom. Amelia's hand holding the chopsticks stiffened. She knew this was a sign that Marshall's mom was about to lecture her. Sure enough, the next second Marshall's mom put down her chopsticks. We won't interfere with other matters. But shouldn't you at least give us a grandchild? You can't just cut off our family line. Marshall immediately put down his chopsticks too. I've told you before, Amelia is afraid of pain. I won't let her endure the agony of childbirth for me. I'd rather remain childless for life. Marshall's dad, Marshall's mom. Upon hearing this, they couldn't bring themselves to eat another bite. Just as the group was about to argue again, Amelia suddenly spoke up. In half a month, Dad, Mom. In half a month you'll have a grandchild. These words left everyone staring at her in shock. Amelia, Marshall grabbed her hand. Didn't we agree not to have children? You don't have to sacrifice for me. Amelia looked at his righteous and solemn expression, her lips curling slightly. She did say they would have a grandchild, but never specified it would be hers. She'd be abroad in half a month anyway. Since he was so fond of Diana, sleeping with her multiple times daily, it was only natural for her to bear the child. So she smiled and said, it's an elder's wish, it should be fulfilled. Marshall looked at her so sensible demeanor and suddenly felt a twinge of unease in his heart. Her sensibility was strangely excessive. Marshall's dad, Marshall's mom finally turned their anger into smiles. That's more like it. Marshall still felt something was off and was about to ask further when his phone suddenly vibrated. He glanced at it, and his expression subtly changed. Amelia was sitting close enough to catch a glimpse. It was from Diana. Marshall, a guy has taken a liking to me and asked for my contact. Should I give it to him? She counted down the seconds in her heart. 1, 2, 3. Finally, at the third second, Marshall stood up. Sorry, Amelia, I have something urgent at the office. Take your time eating here, and I'll come pick you up once I'm done. Without waiting for Amelia's response, he hurriedly left, not even taking his coat. As soon as Marshall left, Marshall's dad and Marshall's mom immediately dropped all pretense. Their faces twisted with disdain as they began to berate her. You, how many years have you been married now, yet your belly remains empty? Aren't you ashamed of yourself? Your family is of low status, and both your parents are dead. If it weren't for Marshall's affection, do you think you could have become Mrs. Quincy? Marrying you was the worst luck in 8 lifetimes. What's with those red eyes? Don't even think about complaining to Marshall later. What wife doesn't get scolded? My son is so busy. Don't you dare bother him with such trivial matters. From morning till afternoon, Amelia was scolded for a full 5 hours. It wasn't until evening that Marshall finally came back to pick her up. The car was smoothly driving on the way home when suddenly Amelia spoke up. Have you finished all your work at the company? Marshall was taken aback for a moment, then replied gently, it's all done. As he spoke, his index finger resting on the steering wheel tapped it lightly. It was an unconscious gesture he made when in a good mood. Perhaps noticing her prolonged silence, Marshall belatedly asked, did Mom and Dad give you a hard time after I left? Amelia was about to speak when she suddenly spotted a pair of torn polka-dot stockings beneath the passenger seat. She knew he left to find Diana, but she never expected they would actually. In the car, they had been married for 5 years, and when it came to intimacy, she had always been quite conservative. Afraid he might find her dull, she once blushed and asked if he wanted her to change, but he just smiled, pulled her into his arms, and kissed her repeatedly. Sweetheart, you're the only one who stirs my heart, even if you were dressed in rags. I'd still be utterly smitten. Don't force yourself to do things you dislike for my sake. Someone who loves you will always be moved by you as you are. But the one who was once so pure-hearted towards her was secretly having such a wild time with another woman. Amelia's eyes reddened. What do you think? Marshall had no idea that his affair with Diana had long been exposed in front of her, and mistakenly thought she was crying because of grievances from her parents. He immediately hit the brakes and pulled her into a comforting embrace. I'm sorry, Amelia, it's my fault for leaving you behind. I promise I'll never let you suffer like this again. Amelia was held tightly by him, yet all she felt was suffocation. She pushed him away, barely holding back her tears. Let's keep driving. After all, they had no future together. After arriving home, Marshall went to park the car first. Amelia stepped inside and saw Diana already changed into a nightgown, sitting on the sofa with snacks, watching TV. She paused and deliberately said, didn't you say you had a mixer today and wouldn't be coming home? Diana curved her lips and pretended to be shy, saying, oh, Amelia, I forgot to tell you, I actually had a fight with my boyfriend, so I went to the mixer on purpose to annoy him. When I told him, he didn't seem to care at all, but the moment I arrived at the ball, he showed up right after and dragged me away. As she spoke, she deliberately flipped down her collar to reveal the dense array of hickeys underneath. Giving Amelia a provocative glance, I really didn't expect him to be so jealous. He went at it with me 3 times right in the car. Amelia listened to her words, her nails digging deep into her palms, the pain spreading throughout her body. She took a deep breath. Since when did you have a boyfriend? Why haven't I heard you mention him before? Diana looked up with a faint smile and said casually, just 3 months ago. Diana moved into Quincy's place exactly 3 months ago. When she had just started working in this city, Marshall's brother was worried and asked him to take extra care of his sister. Turns out, she had been fooling around with him since the very first day she moved in. Amelia was breathing heavily and about to speak when suddenly a pair of large hands grasped Amelia's shoulders from behind. Marshall walked in and said gently, Amelia, you've been tired all day. I'll go draw your bath. After washing up, you should rest early, okay? Amelia was thus ushered into the bathroom. Just as she was about to undress and wash away the day's exhaustion, she realized she had forgotten to bring a change of clothes. The moment she opened the door, a glaring scene abruptly forced its way into her sight. Not far away, Marshall roughly and hastily tore at Diana's nightgown while pinning her tightly against the sofa. His large hands gripped her waist as scattered kisses trailed from her collarbone downward. Diana clutched his shoulders, arching her neck with continuous soft moans. Gentler, Amelia is still showering. Didn't you have enough in the car today? Marshall claimed her more forcefully, the girl's gasps gradually laced with sobs. Shut up. Just try seeing another man in the future. Diana curled a smile at the corner of her lips, then, as if noticing something, seductively lifted her eyes, provocatively glancing at Amelia, who stood frozen at the doorway. All right then, I won't go. Aren't I completely yours already? Such a jealous king. Amelia couldn't take it anymore. She grabbed her change of clothes and slammed the bathroom door shut again. She submerged herself entirely in the water, her mind flooded with the scene from moments ago. 5 years ago, they went on a honeymoon trip to an island. Just because she glanced at a man with abs by the beach, his face darkened, he pulled her back to the presidential suite. And for 7 whole days, didn't let her take a single step outside. After 7 days, the strawberry-flavored lube ran out, and the bed collapsed. He held her in his arms, his eyes reddening with humility. "Amelia, I have everything they have. Don't look at others, don't leave me," she repeatedly assured him for a long time before his jealousy finally subsided. From that day on, she never dared to glance at another man again. Now, for Diana, he is just as crazed. Amelia emerged from the water, taking a deep breath. When she stepped out of the bathroom, only Marshall remained in the room. On the table before him, aside from sliced fruit, there was also a steaming cup of brown sugar water. Seeing her come out, he quickly handed her the brown sugar water in an attempt to please her. "I counted the days, your period is due soon. I prepared this brown sugar water in advance, have a sip, and it won't hurt as much later." Amelia held that steaming cup of brown sugar water. Yet not a shred of warmth reached her heart. She couldn't understand how his acting could be so flawless. Fresh from another woman's bed, he could instantly transform into the loving husband who adored her deeply. This question coiled around her heart, robbing her of sleep throughout the night. Just as she was drifting off to sleep, the deeply slumbering Marshall suddenly called out, "Amelia." The next moment, he was abruptly startled awake, frantically groping around in confusion. Only when his hands found her body did he hurriedly pull her into his embrace. "Amelia, don't go." Amelia stiffened slightly. "What's wrong with you?" Marshall turned red-eyed with lingering fear. "I had a nightmare where you left me. Thankfully it was just a dream. And you're still here." Amelia lowered her eyes, wanting very much to tell him, "She will be gone soon." Perhaps because of this dream, the next day Marshall insisted on taking Amelia to work with him. Amelia refused, but he begged her relentlessly, not wanting to waste any more time on this. Amelia had no choice but to follow him out the door. No sooner had she entered Marshall's office than she saw his desk covered with photos of herself. Noticing her absorbed gaze at the photos, he embraced her from behind, nuzzling his face against the nape of her neck with dependence. "Many women often try to cling to me, but after placing these photos, the effect has improved significantly. Don't worry, darling. Your husband keeps himself very clean." Amelia lowered her eyes to look at him without saying a word. Just then, the assistant knocked on the door to remind him that the meeting was about to start. Marshall reluctantly held her for a while longer before turning away to attend to his work, letting Amelia explore around first. Amelia wasn't in the mood to wander, but she didn't want to stay in his office either, so she walked around each floor. And around noon, she suddenly received a call from the immigration office. "Miss Amelia, we need you to personally come to the immigration office to sign a document." Amelia was about to speak when a familiar voice suddenly came from behind. "What immigration?" Amelia whirled around just in time to see Marshall standing behind her with a drastically changed expression. The moment she hung up the phone, he rushed over and grabbed her hand. "Amelia, who's immigrating?" Amelia remained expressionless. "It's a classmate of mine. She's planning to emigrate and wanted to meet up before leaving." Perhaps because her expression was too calm, Marshall never considered the possibility she might be lying. But he still hugged her tightly, frightened. "I thought it was you. You scared me to death." Amelia gave a faint smile. "It's just emigration. Why such a big reaction?" Marshall felt his heart pounding wildly as he helplessly explained. "Amelia, you know my family background. 3 generations in the military. We can't go abroad." After a pause, as if still uneasy, he repeatedly reminded her, "If I do anything wrong, you can hit me, scold me, even kill me. Just don't emigrate abroad. Because then I'd never be able to find you, and that would be worse than death." Held tightly in his arms, Amelia merely smiled faintly and said, "I understand." Perhaps sensing something unusual, Marshall spent the next few days keeping Amelia by his side, never leaving her for a moment. Even when a friend opened a new club and invited their circle for a gathering, he wanted to take her along as well. With him watching her like this every day, Amelia had no idea how to sneak away to sign the immigration papers. So she simply followed him. As soon as they entered the private room, a group of brothers immediately surrounded them. "Sis-in-law, just relax and enjoy yourself today. We know you prefer quiet. So we've switched all the music to piano pieces and cleared out the whole place." "That's right, sis-in-law. We've also prepared some desserts for you here." Marshall arranged them. "All your favorites. Come, sis-in-law, sit over here, the fruits are all washed and cut. Marshall watched them and couldn't help raising an eyebrow. Since when did you all become so good at pleasing people? Who in the world doesn't know that sis-in-law is Marshall's beloved? If we don't please sis-in-law, Marshall won't want to hang out with us anymore. Right, exactly. Everyone knows Marshall forgets his brothers once he gets a wife. We brothers can only suffer in silence and join Marshall in spoiling his wife rotten. The room erupted in laughter instantly. Just as the atmosphere was at its peak, a petite figure suddenly walked in. It was Diana. The manager quickly stepped forward to stop her. Sorry, miss, the club has an important guest today and isn't accepting other visitors. Diana pushed him away and walked in without hesitation. Amelia, Marshall, so it's you two who booked the place. What a coincidence. Mind if I join? Without waiting for a response, she walked over and sat down next to Amelia. Then, under the dim lighting, she pulled Marshall's hand beneath her skirt. Amelia trembled slightly and couldn't help but glance at Marshall. The moment Diana appeared, his expression changed as if he wanted to send her away. But the instant his hand was pulled under her skirt, he closed his eyes, his slender fingers moving faintly. At that moment, Amelia felt as if she could barely breathe. She struggled to control her emotions, pretending not to have noticed anything. Midway through the gathering, Amelia got up and went to the restroom. She splashed cold water on her face over and over, trying to sober up, until a provocative voice suddenly appeared beside her. Amelia, I don't mean to be harsh, but you're still so young, you should dress up more and not always be so conservative. Amelia looked up and saw in the mirror Diana with a hint of disdain in her eyes. Look at me. She flung open her coat, revealing the fox-themed lingerie beneath. They say men are visual creatures, ruled by their lower instincts. Want to make a bet? If I tell him I'm wearing this, do you think Marshall will keep accompanying you? Or, secretly can't wait to have me right here? Amelia trembled slightly, remained silent, shook the water off her hands, and returned to the private room. Before long, Diana also walked in. Just as I passed by Marshall, I quietly tapped on his phone. Marshall glanced at his phone, and though the message was brief, it made his Adam's apple bob slightly as his eyes darkened abruptly. Then he casually tossed his phone into his pocket and suddenly stood up. Amelia, I need to step out to make a phone call. Stay here for now, I'll be back soon. Without waiting for her response, he hurriedly stood up and left, and not long after, Diana also excused herself and left. Watching the two figures disappear into the distance, Amelia struggled to suppress her breathing, yet the pain in her heart felt like a sharp blade, slicing mercilessly into her soul again and again. The agony was unbearable, and all she could think of was dragging Marshall down into hell with her, making him suffer even more, hurt even deeper. As the night grew deeper, Marshall, who had promised to return immediately that afternoon, still hadn't appeared. A group of brothers exchanged awkward glances, silently looking at each other. Finally, one of the brothers stood up and suggested sending Amelia home first, explaining that Marshall might have been held up by something. Amelia only felt it was ironic. What else could possibly hold him up? Diana aside, but she said nothing, silently leaving the private room. A group of brothers eagerly escorted her to the car, but as soon as she got in, she realized she had forgotten her bag. Just as she was about to return to the private room to retrieve it, she suddenly heard a long sigh from inside. Finally got the sister-in-law out. Any longer and I would have definitely slipped up. I don't know how Marshall manages to act so well in front of her. Amelia's feet seemed instantly nailed to the ground. The conversation inside still hadn't ended. Marshall and Diana, aren't they done yet? It's been so long, almost 5 hours now. What's the rush? Marshall is so intense, Diana is so alluring, they won't come down until they've been at it for a whole day, but they were just too blatant about it, going at it like a house on fire in the next booth. I even heard moans in the middle of it. Luckily, I was quick-witted enough to have someone turn up the music, so sis-in-law didn't notice. You have no idea how nervous I was just now. What's there to be nervous about? After you've done it a few more times like me, you'll get used to it. Marshall finally has a woman by his side that he actually fancies, instead of just orbiting around sis-in-law all the time. Of course, we gotta help him out. Let him indulge in those wildflowers to his heart's content. Ha 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 ha. Sis-in-law is pretty, no doubt, but she's just too conservative, probably like a dead fish in bed. Come on, what man doesn't love a thrilling seductress? The rest of the words Amelia could no longer make out. A buzzing filled her ears as she stumbled dazedly forward. So everyone had known, they had all kept it from her alone, these so-called brothers, who treated her with surface-level courtesy, had secretly been helping Marshall cover his tracks while openly mocking and humiliating her. Her heart felt as if invisible hands were tearing it apart, and unbearable agony radiated through every limb. The heavy rain poured outside. Yet she seemed completely unaware, walking forward step by step like a soulless zombie. She walked alone to the immigration office, signed the papers in a disheveled state, then she walked back home alone and shut herself tightly inside her room. After that day, Amelia developed a high fever. Marshall discovered it the next day when he returned. By then, Amelia was already burning with fever, delirious to the point of not recognizing anyone. He was so terrified it nearly took half his life, frantically carrying her to the hospital. Fortunately, it was just a minor flu. After a day and night on and 4 drip, she regained consciousness. Marshall was still overwhelmed with fear. Not only did he reserve the entire floor, but he also stopped going to the company, staying by her side without leaving for a moment. Until that day, the assistant pushed the door open and said an extremely important client had come to visit and insisted on seeing him. Marshall frowned and was about to refuse when the assistant quickly whispered something in his ear. His expression changed slightly, and in the end, he released Amelia's hand. Amelia, Before he could finish, Amelia closed her eyes and calmly interrupted him. Go ahead. Marshall looked at Amelia's calm expression, and for some reason, his heart suddenly ached. He wasn't unaware of the strangeness, but he was in a hurry to leave. So he comforted himself by thinking Amelia was just in a bad mood from being sick and that he was overthinking it. He instructed the nurse to take good care of Amelia, told her he would come back to accompany her after finishing his work, and then turned to leave. 3 days later, Amelia didn't wait for Marshall to return, but instead received a call from Diana. Diana's smug voice came through the phone. Amelia, I have some good news for you. I'm pregnant and going to be a mom, and guess what? The father is your husband. He's been with me these past few days, pampering me like crazy. He carries me out of bed and even hand feeds me. Oh, and the doctor said we can have sex after 3 months of pregnancy. He was so thrilled that he pinned me down on the bed that very night and took me over and over. Plus, no need for condoms with a baby on the way. He went even wilder, trying dozens of positions all night. Exhausting, but so damn good. I loved every second of it. Oops, I might have said too much. Amelia, you're not mad, are you? And don't blame Marshall. After all, compared to a fever, his child is way more important, right? Diana's words were dripping with venom. Under normal circumstances, she thought, this would have crushed her. Perhaps she had long been numb to the pain. For now, hearing these words, not a single tear could fall from her eyes. She said nothing, asked nothing, only silently pressed the record button. Marshall, I'm very curious about how you'll feel when you hear this recording. Amelia was discharged from the hospital on her birthday, a doubly joyous occasion. Marshall splurged extravagantly, booking the city's most luxurious hotel to celebrate Amelia's birthday. The opulence of the banquet left arriving guests gasping in awe and envy. Marshall's group of brothers also meticulously prepared birthday gifts for her, yet she showed little interest, as after the previous incident, she had lost all fondness for Marshall's band of brothers. But those people didn't think much of it, assuming she was just lacking energy after recovering from a serious illness. Soon it was time for the cake-cutting and wish-making ceremony. Marshall wrapped his arms around her, holding her hand as they cut the cake together while asking her, Amelia, it's your birthday today. Do you have any wishes? If it were before, she would have shaken her head and said no, because back then she felt that as long as he loved her, it was enough. But now she has a very strong desire to leave him and never see him again. She raised her eyes to look at the man gazing at her affectionately. Will you fulfill any wish I make? Marshall was taken aback for a moment, then smiled even more tenderly. Of course, Amelia smiled, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. In that case, I do have 3 wishes. Marshall smiled adoringly. All right, tell me, whatever you want, I'll give it to you. Amelia turned around and took out a blank sheet of paper from her bag. My first wish is for you to sign this blank sheet of paper. Upon hearing this, everyone gasped in shock. Everyone in the circle knew that given their status, signing on a blank piece of paper was their greatest taboo. If exploited by those with ill intentions, the consequences would be unimaginable. Marshall, how could someone as cautious as him possibly sign it? unless he's gone mad. To everyone's astonishment, Marshall just gave a doting smile, then promptly signed Amelia's proffered white paper without a moment's hesitation. Good girl, it's done. Amelia clutched the paper tightly, feeling a wave of relief. With this Marshall autograph, she could now draft the divorce agreement. From this day forward, she would have nothing more to do with Marshall. Marshall saw the corners of her eyes crinkle and felt his mood lift in response. Sweetheart, what's the second wish? Amelia lifted her gaze to look at the guests before her. They stared at her, some with shock, others with admiration. The only discordant presence was Diana. Standing not far away, her eyes fixed on Amelia with an expression of sheer jealousy, yet her vision drifted past them, gazing into the distance as if trying to glimpse the foreign lands where her future life would unfold. The next moment, she curled her lips into a smile. My second wish is for you to transfer all the shares of the Quincy family's corporation to me. This statement immediately caused a huge uproar, shocking the entire audience. Marshall's shares are worth hundreds of billions. Even if he dotes on his wife, it's impossible for him to transfer all of them to her. Yet Marshall immediately called his lawyer, instructing them to transfer all his shares without exception to his wife Amelia immediately. Amelia looked at the electronically signed and stamped share transfer document on her phone, feeling elated. Selling these shares would ensure a carefree life abroad for her, more than enough to last 10 lifetimes. Marshall held her lovingly in his arms. Sweetheart, I'm penniless now, working for you. You can't abandon me. Amelia pursed her lips, about to speak, when a sudden exclamation erupted from the crowd. Oh no, someone fainted. Marshall looked up and saw that the person who had fainted was Diana. His expression changed abruptly, and he was about to rush forward when reason made him remember something again. He turned back to Amelia, saying, Amelia, I'll take her to the hospital first. You stay here and have fun, for the last wish. Just text me. Gone. Marshall didn't catch it clearly. What? Amelia shook her head. Never mind. You can go. Watching him carry Diana and hurry away, Amelia smiled faintly. Marshall, my third wish doesn't need you to fulfill it for me anymore. Because of that wish, which is to leave you completely, just 3 more days, and I can do it. In the evening, Amelia had just returned home when she received Marshall's call from the hospital. Amelia, I'm sorry, Diana. She's not well and needs to stay in the hospital for a few more days. His brother asked me to take care of her, and I can't go back on my word. I need to stay at the hospital to look after her these days, so I won't be able to come back to be with you. Amelia said very calmly, It's okay, you take good care of her. Marshall, from now on, you can always be there for her. 3 days left before departure, Diana suddenly sent Amelia a video. In the video, the same birthday party venue. Diana stood in the center surrounded by piles of gifts, wearing a princess dress and a crown. Marshall hugged her from behind and affectionately kissed her earlobe. Happy birthday, little princess. What's your wish? Diana lifted her chin arrogantly. I want to be like Amelia. No matter what wish I make, you have to fulfill it for me. Marshall pinched the tip of her nose affectionately. All right, we'll fulfill all our little princess's wishes. Amelia did not reply, silently saved the video, and then walked out the door. She took Marshall's signed blank paper and went to a law firm. Miss Amelia, the divorce agreement has been drafted. Once you sign your name beside it, your marital relationship will be completely dissolved. Amelia nodded and signed her name without hesitation. From this moment onward, she and Marshall would be complete strangers. There were 2 days left before departure. Diana sent Amelia another video. In the video, Marshall is carefully pressing his ear against Diana's belly. Diana curled her lips. The baby is only 3 months old. What could you possibly hear? Marshall said with great seriousness. I heard him calling me daddy. Diana laughed even more heartily, pulling down her nightgown slightly. The baby can't talk yet, but if you want to hear it, I can let you hear it to your heart's content, daddy. In that instant, Marshall's Adam's apple bobbed as he turned and pinned her beneath him on the bed. Next, the bed began to shake violently, again and again. Marshall, this position, no, don't lift me up like this. Marshall's voice was deep and hoarse. Didn't you call me daddy? This is how a father holds his good girl. Amelia still hadn't responded. She made a call to her lawyer and sold all the shares Marshall had gifted her. Then she went to the bank, withdrew a portion of the money, and exchanged it into foreign currency. On the day of departure, Amelia woke up very early. She was busy with 3 tasks to accomplish. The first thing she did was gather all the gifts Marshall had given her over the years and gave them away for free to the servants in the villa. The servants were both delighted and puzzled. As these gifts were all priceless treasures, Amelia smiled happily. "I've had some very good news recently and wanted to share my joy with everyone. Don't feel burdened. Just accept them, and also, there's no need to clean the villa today, no meals to prepare, no flowers to water, you can all leave early." The servants were overjoyed by such good fortune and repeatedly thanked Amelia before leaving the villa with a pile of gifts. Secondly, she compiled all the provocative messages, videos, and recordings that Diana had sent her during this period. For the messages, she had 1,000,000 copies printed and scattered across the city using drones. As for the videos, she had them projected on the giant advertising screens downtown, playing on loop throughout the city. She arranged for 10,000 loudspeakers to continuously play the recording in the square. Third, she packed all her luggage and placed the divorce certificate on the table. At that moment, her phone suddenly rang. It was Marshall calling. His tone remained gentle. "Amelia. I'll be done with my work soon, and I'll come back to be with you once I'm finished." Amelia responded with a hum. "I just happened to have prepared a surprise for you." Marshall sounded quite expectant. "Really? What surprise has my sweetheart prepared for her husband?" Amelia said calmly. "You'll see it as soon as you get back. Perhaps, if the timing is just right on the way, you might see it too." Those text messages, videos, and recordings. Marshall hung up the phone full of anticipation. Amelia simply walked out with her packed suitcase. On the tree-lined path, she encountered a few neighbors. They greeted her warmly. "Amelia, going on a trip?" Amelia nodded enthusiastically in response. "Yes, going out to play." Just that she would never return again. The sunlight was just right today. Amelia carried her luggage and boarded the car to the airport without looking back. In the hospital, Marshall looked at Diana on the hospital bed, his tone carrying a hint of reproach. "You're pregnant, why are you running around? What if something happens to the baby?" The woman on the bed, as if she hadn't heard, hugged his waist and coquettishly said, "All right, I got it. I didn't see you just now. I thought you didn't want me anymore." By the end of it, her eyes were slightly red, but Marshall wasn't buying any of it. He pushed her away abruptly, gripping her chin, his tone carrying a hint of warning. "I told you long ago that as long as you don't say anything inappropriate in front of her, our relationship can continue. Besides, you're carrying my child now. Stop thinking about all these unnecessary things. Focus on taking care of the pregnancy. I need to go back for a while." After saying this, Marshall released his grip and walked out the door. Diana flashed a hint of unwillingness in her eyes, quickly grabbing his arm, her voice laced with pleading. "Do you really have to leave now? This is when the child needs their father the most." As she spoke, her fair fingers slid down from his chest, a touch of seduction creeping into the corners of her eyes. Marshall swallowed hard, and the next moment, he cupped the back of her head and leaned in for a kiss. Soon the woman's moans and the man's muffled groans intertwined, faintly audible through the door crack. They made the nurse on rounds blush and quietly retreat. Late at night, Marshall changed into fresh clothes and left the hospital. As Riverside Gardens drew nearer, Marshall felt an increasing weight of guilt in his heart. In the afternoon, he had called Amelia to say he would come back to accompany her in the evening. But he only returned just now. Who knows how upset she must be by now, and she even mentioned preparing a surprise for him on the table. He irritably ran his hand through his hair while gripping the steering wheel. When his gaze suddenly caught sight of the apology gift on the passenger seat beside him, it was a new watch he specifically called his assistant to pick for Amelia on his way home. It was also something Amelia had casually mentioned wanting to buy a long time ago. It could also serve as compensation for her birthday and for his recent neglect of her. Marshall stared at the gift for a long time, only snapping out of it when the gate of Linjiang Garden opened, then hurriedly drove toward the villa. He didn't have time to close the car door, hastily carrying the gifts as he strode toward the house. Amelia, slap. The moment the living room light was turned on by Marshall, he froze in place. The entire villa was empty, with no one else there except him. He could not only clearly hear the sound of the clock's hour hand moving on the wall, but also the sudden rapid beating of his own heart. Marshall stood frozen in the entryway for a long moment before finally lifting his stiff legs to walk toward the living room. At a glance, he spotted the vibrant red on the table. Marshall remembered Amelia's words and hurried toward the table. When he finally read the words on the red booklet, Marshall suddenly dropped the gift he was holding onto the floor. The fragile box instantly shattered into pieces, its fragments scratching the watch face inside. Marshall felt darkness clouding his vision in waves. Struggling to steady his trembling hands, he picked up the divorce certificate on the table. The moment his fingers touched the embossed seal of the divorce document, all his strength drained away. The man who dominates the business world now lacks even a shred of courage to stamp this divorce certificate. Sir, it wasn't until the butler's voice sounded that Marshall snapped back to reality and tucked the divorce certificate into his pocket. He looked up at the butler and saw him standing there with several servants, holding some items in their hands. Sir, Madam gave us many gifts when she left today. She said she wanted to share her joy with us. We thought the gifts from the madam were too valuable, so we intended to return them to her, but the madam insisted we keep them. We felt uneasy holding on to them, so we thought it best to let you handle it. Marshall could no longer hear anything. His vision was fixed solely on the gifts in the hands of the butler and the servants. All those were gifts he either meticulously crafted or carefully selected to give to Amelia. She had once treasured them so dearly. Why did she suddenly not want them anymore, and even gave them all away to others? As he touched the divorce certificate in his pocket, he suddenly felt it burning hot. His hands trembled uncontrollably from the scalding heat, yet his voice remained eerily calm. A calmness even he found hard to believe. Uncle, you said Madam went out today. Do you know where she went? He had to find her, had to ask her for an explanation. Why did she suddenly divorce him when they were doing so well together? Just suddenly abandoned him. The people across from each other exchanged glances. We don't know either. We only saw the lady leave happily at the time, and didn't think to ask more. Marshall took a deep breath and motioned for them to place the gifts on the table nearby. The butler and servants quietly left after placing the gifts in order. Marshall gazed at the pile of gifts covering the table, his eyes dark and unreadable. It was at this moment that Marshall noticed a piece of paper still pressed beneath the pile of gifts. As he pulled out the paper and was about to discard it, the handwriting on it suddenly caught his eye. Amelia's handwriting is as delicate and graceful as she is. Always gentle and serene, no matter how great the difficulty she faces, she remains remarkably composed, yet the paper bears several punctures from the pen's tip. It only records Diana's affair locations, times, and frequency with him. Other than this, she left him not a single word, yet it seemed as though all that needed to be said and done had already been made clear. After reading the last word, Marshall gripped the paper so tightly his fingers turned white. At that moment, the phone in his hand suddenly began vibrating wildly. As soon as the call connected, the assistant's urgent voice came through from the other end. Something's happened, President. Someone printed out all the details about you and Miss Chu, and used drones to distribute them throughout City Y. Although most of the drones have been intercepted by our team, many people have already seen them. Many shareholders have called to ask what's going on. Marshall suddenly clenched the paper in his hand, crumpling it. Get PR and legal to suppress this matter immediately. I don't want to see or hear about this matter anywhere again. With that, he abruptly hung up the phone, then cast a deep glance at the paper in his hand. Finally, he crumpled the paper into a ball, stuffed it into his pocket, and turned to walk toward the main door. The black car roared back to life, like a dark arrow piercing through the curtain of rain. The car finally came to a steady stop at the hospital entrance. Marshall didn't even have time to close the car door before striding toward the hospital entrance. The night shift nurse quickly stood up to greet him when she saw him approaching. But upon seeing Marshall's gloomy expression, all the words she wanted to say got stuck in her throat. Then the young nurse saw Marshall walk straight into a hospital room and slammed the door shut. The loud banging sound not only startled the young nurse, making her shiver, but also woke up Diana, who had been sleeping in the hospital bed. She drowsily propped herself up, about to scold which inconsiderate nurse had disturbed her sleep, but upon clearly seeing the man standing by her bed, the anger in her eyes instantly turned to delight. Marshall, what are you doing here? She thought Marshall would stay with her after taking her several times today, yet in the end, he still had to leave. At the thought of him spending these days with Amelia, an inexplicable bitterness welled up in her heart. Amelia, what does that woman even have over her? She can't dress well, nor can she bear children. The more she thought about it, the more aggrieved she felt, barely managing to soothe herself to sleep. Yet not long after, Marshall actually came to accompany her again. Indeed, he still had her in his heart. Thinking of this, Diana couldn't help but feel smug and reached out for him to hold her, but instead of the expected embrace, she suddenly felt a tight grip around her neck. Marshall gripped her neck, his usually indifferent eyes filled with rage. I said I only love Amelia. If you want to maintain this relationship with me, it can only be in secret. If she finds out, our relationship ends immediately. Diana, where did you get the audacity to provoke her to her face? His tone grew colder, and the strength in his hand increased. Diana paled, struggling desperately while tearfully explaining, no, I didn't. Marshall, believe me, I never exposed our relationship to Amelia. Marshall threw her onto the bed and flung the paper from his pocket onto Diana's face. You never told her. Then how did she know all this? Diana tremblingly unfolded the crumpled paper, her face instantly drained of all color. She could no longer care about anything else, climbing down from the hospital bed to kneel before him, weeping and begging for mercy. Every word she spoke was a plea in her own defense. She had only done it because she loved him too much. She never expected Amelia to leave directly after finding out. Marshall just looked down at her coldly like that. You love me, but I don't love you. If you hadn't taken advantage of my drunkenness to climb into my bed, how could we have ended up like this? Diana, who had been sobbing, suddenly stopped crying. She looked up at him in a daze. You don't love me. How dare you not love me? She suddenly went mad, screaming at him with heart-wrenching agony. She had devoted her entire youth to the man before her. She had even given him her most precious virtue as a woman. She had even conceived his child. He actually doesn't love her. Watching Diana act like a madwoman, Marshall suddenly remembered the woman who had screamed at her cheating husband in the neighboring villa that day. He bent down and pinched her chin, squeezing it so hard it nearly dislocated. What kind of person do you think you are, to demand my love? If it weren't for Amelia being infertile, do you think you'd still be alive today? You would have been torn limb from limb the very next day after climbing into my bed, at that cocktail party. He was persuaded by business partners to drink a few more glasses, and Amelia had always disliked the smell of alcohol. He just thought about resting in the guest room for the night, waiting for the alcohol smell to fade before going to the master bedroom. But when he woke up from his drunken state, he found a completely naked Diana lying beside him. At that moment, he was both furious and terrified. What angered him was that he never expected his friend's sister to be so bold as to dare climb into his bed. What he feared was that Amelia would feel sad and heartbroken upon finding out, or even leave him. At that moment, he had only one thought: to eliminate Diana. But Diana knelt on the ground, pleading with him desperately. Meanwhile, his parents called again, pressuring them to have a child, but Amelia can't bear children. After hanging up the phone, he sat in the room and smoked all night. Somehow, Diana came to mind. If Amelia can't bear children, then let Diana do it instead. As long as the child was born, he would concede some benefits to the Chu family, letting them send Diana abroad, treat that child as if it were born between him and Amelia. He thought so, and acted accordingly. Originally, everything was progressing according to his plan, but now everything has been ruined. Marshall's heartless words made Diana instantly lose all her strength. She let go of her hands in despair and lowered her head. She had always thought that Marshall didn't drive her away back then because he had developed a desire for her body. Although she was the daughter of the Chu family, she was brought back to the Chu family under the name of an illegitimate child. Upon arriving at the Chu family, she discovered that apart from the eldest brother being a legitimate child, there were over a dozen illegitimate children like her. Diana's dad was busy sleeping with women all day, while her mother was constantly scheming how to extract more money from Diana's dad. This made her deeply aware that in wealthy families, love is the cheapest commodity. Diana consequently abandoned all illusions about love. It's not bad if she can keep him with her body, but later, he treated her better and better, even repeatedly abandoning Amelia for her. Diana's heart gradually softened, and the desires in her heart grew increasingly greedy. She not only wanted to bear his child but also to marry him, to make him completely hers from head to toe. But now he heartlessly told her that the only reason he kept her was because Amelia couldn't bear children. Marshall gradually revealed a ruthless glint in his eyes, yet his voice remained cold and calm. Go for the surgery first thing tomorrow morning. After all, Amelia had already left, so the child in Diana's womb was no longer of any use. The previously lifeless Diana suddenly raised her head, shaking it incessantly. No, don't, Marshall, you can't be so cruel. That's your child too. She broke down in tears, pleading with him desperately. The baby in her belly is her lifeline. She absolutely cannot lose this child. Marshall didn't even glance at her. Turning to leave the hospital room, Diana ignored everything else, scrambling to her feet to chase after him. But from kneeling too long, her legs suddenly went numb, and she collapsed to the ground. A surge of warmth flowed from between her legs, staining the white tiles with large patches of red. Diana writhed in pain, her body convulsing as she lay helplessly on the ground. Her blood-covered hand desperately reached out to grasp Marshall. "Marshall, don't go, please, I beg you, save our child." The pain overwhelmed her vision. Her hands collapsed weakly to the ground as she could only gasp for air in ragged breaths. Tears of regret streamed from the corners of her eyes. If only she hadn't been so greedy, if only she hadn't gone to Amelia to provoke her. Would she have ended up like this otherwise? Yet Marshall remained standing in place, watching coldly as she writhed in pain until she passed out. He then opened the ward door and called for the nurse on duty. "Take the person inside to the operating room, just make sure they don't die." Without another glance at Diana, he turned and headed straight back to the villa. Looking at the photo of the two of them on the table, Marshall's heart gradually ached. He held the photo for a long time, and finally picked up his phone to call Amelia's family and friends. Marshall wanted to ask them if they knew Amelia's whereabouts. From the first call to the 99th, the answer he received was always no. In the end, he even swallowed his pride and called his mortal enemy. Yet, apart from his enemy's mockery, the answer remained no. Soon, those he had sent to search for Amelia's trail also brought back their reply. The answer remains no. Amelia vanished like a wisp of smoke, leaving no trace behind. He weakly hung up the phone and sat lifelessly in the chair all night. Meanwhile, Diana struggled in the operating room for a full day and night before finally delivering a barely formed male fetus. When she woke up, she saw her mother sitting by the bed, remembering the grievances of the past few days. Her tears couldn't help but flow again. "Mom." But before she could finish speaking, Diana's mom slapped her hard across the face. "Slap, Mom." Diana covered her swollen face in disbelief as she looked at Diana's mom. Tears immediately streamed from her eyes, yet Diana's mom still felt it wasn't enough and fiercely slapped Diana again. "How could you be the other woman?" Diana's mom trembled with anger, but sorrow welled up from her heart. Last night, Marshall and Diana's affair had already spread throughout the entire city. Why? Even Diana's dad got off a woman's bed overnight and rushed home to question Diana's mom about what had happened. Although the Beijing social circle is known for its wild antics, it's an unspoken rule to keep such matters under wraps and never air them in public. Moreover, as the social climate shifts, the older generation has begun imposing stricter controls on the younger ones. Diana's dad has also strictly forbidden his children from becoming the other woman, causing pregnancies, or letting scandals become public knowledge. Now, Diana has managed to step on every single landmine possible, and what's more, she was Marshall's mistress. This group of people weren't unaware of Marshall's devotion to Amelia. Diana's dad didn't care why Marshall, known for doting on his wife, would have an affair. All he knew was how much damage Diana's role as the other woman could do to the Chu family. The Chu family's stocks will fall, and the eldest son's once certain marriage will also be affected. Finally, the furious Diana's dad completely ignored Diana's mom's pleas and directly removed Diana from the Chu family registry. He then immediately announced Diana would no longer have any ties to the Chu family. Diana's mom was filled with despair. As someone who had been through it, she didn't want Diana to repeat her old path. So from Diana's mom's first day in the Chu family, she had planned everything for her daughter's future, including the choice of her future husband. But now everything has been Diana's fault. Diana's mom suppressed the pain in her heart and threw a card at Diana. "From now on, you're on your own." After saying this, Diana's mom left resolutely, ignoring Diana's heartbroken sobs. On the other side, Quincy family villa, Amelia's uncle punched Marshall in the face. "Marshall, is this how you treat my niece?" Bang! Marshall was caught off guard by Amelia's dad with this punch, stumbling backward several steps from the impact. But Amelia's dad still felt unsatisfied and threw another punch. This caused onlookers to scream in shock, yet no one dared to step in and stop it. Amelia's dad had lived most of his life without ever getting into a heated conflict with anyone over anything. But now, Amelia's dad was so furious with Marshall that his eyes blazed with anger, and his voice trembled uncontrollably. when you begged to marry Amelia, you made it crystal clear that you would never betray her, yet in just a few years, you've done such a despicable thing. Amelia's dad and Amelia's mom retired to the countryside, and apart from seeing Amelia once at the wedding, they had never met Marshall before. This counted as their second meeting, although they rarely met in person. During every holiday, Marshall would call them with Amelia to send greetings and have gifts delivered. Amelia's dad and Amelia's mom finally felt their niece had married the right man, yet now, the nephew-in-law they had held in such high regard not only cheated but also had a child with his mistress. This made Amelia's dad unable to swallow his anger. Amelia's dad even wanted to hit him after saying that, but Amelia's mom suddenly stopped him. Forget it, let's go. What's more important now is to find Amelia. As for Marshall, this nephew-in-law, they acted as if he never existed. Amelia's dad finally stopped, glaring coldly at the man he had beaten to the ground. From now on, we'll act like you don't exist. Amelia will also act like she never married you. Ever since learning about Amelia's divorce and disappearance, Marshall has been in a daze. It wasn't until now that he was finally jolted awake by Amelia's dad's punches and these words. He scrambled to his feet in panic, wanting to chase after them, begging them not to be so heartless. He can't leave Amelia. But as soon as he got up from the ground, everything suddenly went black before his eyes, and he lost consciousness completely. Amelia, in her 7th month in the U.S., she received another phone call from a close friend back home. By then, she was already living a fairly comfortable life with the money from selling her Marshall shares. She directly bought a building on the busiest street in New York. The 3rd floor and above serve as her private space, while the 1st floor is rented out to others for a flower shop, and the 2nd floor is leased to a neighbor for a store. Her daily routine involves sitting on the balcony, watering the flowers, sipping coffee, and reading the newspaper. Amelia took a sip of coffee and couldn't help but frown. Even after all this time, she still couldn't get used to the bitter taste of coffee. She placed her coffee cup on the wrought iron table beside her before answering her friend's call. Apart from greeting her, the rest of the phone call was all about Marshall and Diana. Ever since Marshall discovered her departure and exposed his affair with Diana, Diana had a falling out with. Not only did Diana suffer a miscarriage, but also got Amelia's dad, Amelia's mom beaten up. Finally learning of the situation, the Quincy family hastily paid to have the matter suppressed. Unfortunately, it was still a step too late. These events spread like an autumn breeze throughout the entire city. Why? Because the matter has blown up. Marshall was not only removed from the position of president by the reclusive elder Quincy, but also had all his shares revoked. It was only at this moment that the Quincy family realized Marshall had not only transferred all his shares to Amelia, was also Amelia completely sold out to the Quincy family's rival. In the end, the Quincy family had to pay several times the market price to buy back these shares. With this move, the Quincy family not only lost hundreds of billions in funds but also saw their status in the Beijing circle diminish. If it weren't for Marshall's mom pleading desperately, Marshall would have long been kicked out of the Quincy family. In the end, Marshall's mom still gave him some of her shares out of pity for her son. Meanwhile, the idle Marshall spent his days drowning in alcohol while clutching her photo and calling out her name. As for Diana, after her affair as the other woman was exposed, her family cut ties with her, and the headquarters of the fashion magazine where she worked also fired her. Now she has no other option but to cling tightly to Marshall. Marshall had long lost feelings for her, and the Quincy family would never let her in. In the end, with no way out, she made a scene on the hospital rooftop, saying she could stay out of the Quincy family's door, but she had to get the money. The Quincy family would never give it, so in the end, it was Marshall who paid the sum. As a result, Diana drugged Marshall again under the pretense of getting the money, but this time, she wasn't as lucky as before and was directly sent to prison by Marshall, who had sobered up. Amelia felt no emotional ripple after hearing it. After all, Marshall and Diana were just two people completely unrelated to her. She casually chatted with her friend for a few more sentences before hanging up, then stretched and walked toward her room. The next morning, Amelia got up early and went out with her new friend to watch a stage play at the Opera House. The tragic yet beautiful love story of the male and female leads moved the audience to tears. However, Amelia, who had experienced an even more tragic marriage, wasn't moved in the slightest. Although the male and female leads in the stage play were separated due to war, family conflicts, and various other reasons. In the end, the now silver-haired couple still found their way back to each other. And as for her, although she married the love of her life years ago, they had been inseparable for so many years. In the end Marshall still betrayed her, didn't he? The marriage she devoted herself to wholeheartedly ended in tragedy, to the point where she never believed in love again after that. So when she was dining with friends at a restaurant and someone confessed their feelings to her, she remained as calm as an emotionless puppet, no matter how many sweet words the blonde, blue-eyed guy used to move her. She still mercilessly rejected him. The guy, unwilling to give up, wanted to ask her the reason for his rejection. Amelia was stunned for a moment, then smiled faintly. I don't want to fall in love, and I won't get married again. The young man finally lowered his proud head and walked out dejectedly, carrying the flowers. Only then did her friends snap out of it, quickly pulling her down to sit and eat. Amelia, aren't you being too heartless? Rejecting such a great guy. Amelia's close friends grew up in the U.S. and have more liberal views. They all believe that if you like someone, you should give dating a try first. You can always break up later if it doesn't work out. Amelia remained calm in her gaze, though the corners of her lips curled slightly. It's not that I'm heartless, I just don't have the mind for it. The group exchanged glances, then looked at Amelia, who was focused on cutting her steak and clearly uninterested in continuing the conversation. In the end, the discussion came to a halt. In the evening, Amelia bade farewell to the friend who had specially driven her home. Only then did she slowly climb the stairs back to her room. By the time she finished washing up, changed clothes, and stepped out of the bathroom, the housekeeper had already prepared supper on the table. Seeing Amelia emerge, the housekeeper bowed slightly before quietly taking her leave. Amelia sat on the chair sipping coffee while scrolling through her phone. The bitterness of the coffee filled her throat, and before she could even frown, her phone suddenly vibrated. After answering the call, Amelia's expression changed. The call was from the village chief of her uncle's hometown. The village chief answered the phone with great difficulty and told Amelia that ever since her aunt learned about what Marshall had done, she had fallen ill. Her uncle was taking care of her aunt while also teaching the village children. They hoped she could come back to see them if she had time. Amelia felt a sting in her eyes after hanging up the phone. From childhood to adulthood, apart from her parents, her uncle and aunt were the ones who treated her best. During these months abroad, her uncle and aunt often called her, reminding her to take care of her health and look after herself. Yet they only shared good news and hid their troubles. Had the village chief not called, she might have remained in the dark for who knows how long. At this thought, she even skipped her late-night snack. She instructed the butler to book her the earliest flight back home tomorrow while getting up to pack her luggage in the walk-in closet. When Amelia's dad, Amelia's mom in the distant countryside saw Amelia suddenly appear before them, they were both surprised and delighted. They quickly pulled her inside and had her sit on the sofa in the living room. Weren't you doing just fine in America? What brought you back so suddenly? Amelia placed the gifts on their table as she spoke. I just wanted to come back and see you all. Amelia's mom sighed. You silly child. Coming back must have cost you so much money. Seeing Amelia's mom's heartache on her face, Amelia felt a warmth in her heart and grabbed Amelia's mom's hand. Auntie, I heard you haven't been feeling well these past few months. Tomorrow, I'll take you to the hospital in City Y for a checkup. Amelia's mom immediately waved her hands in refusal. I'm perfectly fine, don't waste the money. Speaking of the past, Amelia's mom still teared up and repeatedly apologized to Amelia. She said if they had known Marshall would turn out like this, they would never have let Amelia marry him. Amelia had long stopped being angry about these things. Nor did she blame Amelia's dad or mom. After all, she had known for a long time that Diana disliked her. Diana provoked Amelia the very first moment she laid eyes on Marshall. Amelia, just you wait, he'll end up being mine. Diana's competitive fire burned fiercely, but Amelia couldn't have cared less. After all, at that time Marshall loved her so completely. Even if every man in the world would cheat, Marshall would never cheat. Yet reality slapped her hard in the face. Fortunately, when this incident happened, all her friends and family stood by her side, outraged on her behalf. But in such matters, the one who deserves the most blame is still Marshall. If Marshall was unwilling to cheat, then no matter how Diana tried to seduce him, he wouldn't respond. Yet he ended up being swayed by Diana's repeated provocations. Amelia insisted on taking Amelia's dad and Amelia's mom to City Y Hospital for a checkup. Amelia's mom wasn't doing too well. And the doctor suggested staying in the hospital for a few days for observation. So that very day, Amelia immediately arranged for her aunt to be admitted to a VIP ward. To make it easier to care for Amelia's mom, Amelia not only hired a caregiver to assist, she also had someone rent a courtyard house near the hospital, so that Amelia's dad, after taking care of Amelia's mom, would have a place to rest. Amelia's dad and Amelia's mom felt heartbroken seeing this, and secretly gave Amelia money, only for her to quietly return it. Because of this, Amelia's dad and Amelia's mom couldn't say anything more. On this day, Amelia, after handing over the night shift to the caregiver, thought about going out to call someone to pack 4 meals from Suixinuan and deliver them to the hospital. But just as she reached the hospital corridor, a nurse's sudden exclamation came from ahead, "Make way, quickly. There's a critically ill patient needing surgery, make way, quickly." Hearing this, people in the corridor immediately pressed themselves against the walls to clear the path, watching as several nurses and doctors rushed past pushing a gurney. The moment she saw the patient on the gurney, Amelia froze completely. Is that person up there Marshall? If she hadn't spent 5 years living day and night with Marshall, she definitely wouldn't have recognized him just now. After all, the current Marshall is completely different from how he used to be. His gaunt face was devoid of any color, and his entire body was enveloped in a strong smell of alcohol, making people around him instinctively cover their noses. Amelia pinched her palm and was about to continue walking out when she heard the people beside her whispering, "Did I see that correctly just now? Was that Marshall? How did he end up like this?" He got what he deserved. He was living happily with his wife but had to go and cheat with that daughter of the Chu family. They say since his wife left, he's been drinking heavily all day long, and ends up in the hospital every now and then. The rest of the words Amelia couldn't make out clearly. She turned and walked towards the end of the corridor. A gust of autumn wind blew through the window, chilling her enough to instinctively pull her coat tighter around herself. After finishing the phone call, she sat down on a nearby chair and waited quietly. Soon, a few more people came over and sat Amelia on the chairs opposite her, chatting idly. "Hey, have you heard that Diana has been released from prison?" Cough. "Who are you talking about? How could she be out? Wasn't she supposed to serve several more years?" The person who started the topic looked around before whispering, "I heard from my brother-in-law who works in the prison that Diana is pregnant again." That thing actually worked back then, after she entered prison. They quickly discovered she was pregnant, but Marshall kept suppressing it, not allowing her to leave, and even said he would take her for an abortion. Who would have thought that before they could send Diana for the abortion, he collapsed first. The Quincy family, afraid he might end up childless if this continued, took matters into their own hands and brought Diana to the old family residence. "Just tell them to take good care of her, and after her child is born, send her away directly, ensuring she never returns to City Y again." Amelia listened in a daze until a staff member from Suixinuan handed her a large box. Only then did she snap out of it and thank them, then carried the food container back to the ward. But as she stood up, the autumn wind blew again, sending a chill through her that made her shiver. Back in the hospital room, Amelia handed one portion of the meal to the caregiver nearby. The caregiver thanked her while carrying the meal out, leaving the space to the 3 of them. During the meal, Amelia was distracted by what she had just heard. Amelia's mom asked with concern while adding food to her bowl, "Amelia, what's wrong with you?" Amelia snapped back to reality and quickly smiled, saying it was nothing. She was just thinking that not only was Marshall at this hospital now, but even Diana would come here for her prenatal checkups. If her uncle and aunt were to run into either one of them, wouldn't her aunt get so angry she'd fall ill again? She had to find a way to keep her uncle and aunt away from those two. But Amelia didn't know that Marshall's dad, Marshall's mom, would never let Diana out. From Diana's release from prison and being taken to the Quincy family's home that day, the Quincy family had people watching her around the clock, even for prenatal checkups. They directly sent people to take her to the military hospital. They weren't afraid that Diana would run away. After all, the entire City Y was under the influence of the Quincy family. Where could she possibly escape to? The reason they didn't take her to the hospital where Marshall was located was because they knew their son detested Diana. If Marshall found out that Diana had been taken out of prison by them to carry the pregnancy, Diana's unborn child wouldn't stand a chance of survival. And Diana had never even considered escaping. After all, she learned her lesson after going through prison. She clearly knew that her current situation depended entirely on the child in her womb. As long as the child was born safely, she would never have to worry about food or clothing for the rest of her life. So now, the Quincy family could make her do whatever they wanted, and she had no choice but to obey, didn't even dare to vent anger at the servants. Everyone thought they had kept it perfectly hidden, but Marshall's mom had calculated everything, yet still overlooked one person, Marshall's butler. That day, the butler had originally come to the old house to fetch Marshall's change of clothes. He happened to witness this scene, also saw Marshall's mom ordering the servants to keep their mouths shut. The butler left secretly without even taking his clothes, in the hospital. The awakened Marshall looked at the butler's hesitant expression with impatience. What's wrong at home again? Ever since Amelia left, Marshall's temperament has changed a lot. The butler couldn't care about anything else and quickly explained how the Quincy family had Diana released from prison to rest during her pregnancy. The butler also mentioned that to protect Diana's pregnancy, Marshall's mom had specifically ordered that no one was to tell Marshall about it. After speaking, the butler stood aside, carefully watching Marshall, afraid he might get angry. Surprisingly, Marshall just waved his hand to dismiss the butler after hearing it. After the butler closed the door, Marshall casually tossed the orange in his hand aside and lay on the bed, staring blankly at the ceiling. If those things hadn't happened back then, perhaps Amelia would have been pregnant with their child, the boy would resemble him, and the girl would surely take after him completely. Yet whether it's a boy or a girl, the child's face would undoubtedly bear traces of both him and Amelia. He covered his face in despair and let out a bitter laugh. But those things had to happen. He doesn't even know where she is now. How could they possibly have a child? The nurse who came to change his dressing at night, seeing him all alone, couldn't help but advise him to find someone to take care of himself. The nurse also mentioned that there was a patient in the VIP ward downstairs who not only had her husband by her side taking care of her, even her niece rushed back from abroad overnight, not only hiring a caregiver but also staying by her side without leaving. The nurse recalled Amelia's appearance and couldn't help but sigh, wondering if such a sensible and filial woman was married. The nurse spoke earnestly, but failed to notice Marshall's hand suddenly clenching. After a long time, he suddenly spoke up and asked, "Do you know what that niece's surname is?" The nurse was taken aback and replied uncertainly, "Oh dear, I'm not quite sure either." With that, the nurse pushed the cart and walked out again. But the very next second after the nurse closed the door, Marshall threw off the covers, put on his shoes, and rushed out. The closer he got to Amelia's mom's hospital room, Marshall's heart grew increasingly excited. It was her. It must be her. It's Amelia. When the nurse first started speaking those words, Marshall didn't pay any attention and wasn't really listening. It wasn't until the nurse mentioned Amelia's appearance, saying she had a teardrop mole at the corner of her eye, Marshall gradually grew suspicious. Among all the people he knew, only Amelia had a teardrop mole. That was when he started getting excited. Until the nurse said the niece's surname was Shin, he finally confirmed it was Amelia. She had returned, and was so close to him. Marshall, disregarding his own barely recovered health, hurried downstairs and began searching room by room. At that moment, his body suddenly stiffened. A slender figure appeared right before him. Amelia. His body reacted faster than his thoughts. Without another thought, he immediately chased after Amelia, fearful that any further delay would cause Amelia to vanish from sight. In the distance, Amelia paused, her hand on the tightly closed hospital room door upon hearing that familiar voice. She instinctively turned around and saw Marshall striding toward her. Amelia turned and ran downstairs without hesitation. She had no time to think about Marshall's discovery of her presence here. She didn't want to see him at all right now. Amelia ignored everything else and dashed out of the hospital, hailing a taxi at random. "Driver, go quickly." At this very moment, Marshall also caught up, knocking on the car window. Amelia, listen to me, please, don't go." Amelia completely ignored him and immediately urged the driver to hurry up. As the rear of the car disappeared from his sight, Marshall instinctively wanted to chase after it. His stomach suddenly contracted violently, the pain forcing him to instinctively bend over and clutch his abdomen. At that moment, a sharp shout rang out, "Marshall!" Just as he was about to pick up Amelia from her shift, Amelia's dad saw this scene and became furious. He punched Marshall in the face. "How dare you come looking for Amelia?" After saying that, Marshall's dad threw another punch at Marshall, already unsteady from stomach pain. Marshall was knocked to the ground by Amelia's dad with that punch. Marshall turned pale and reached out as if trying to grab something. But Amelia's dad didn't even glance at him, turning and walking away directly. "Get out, don't let me see you again." After this incident, Amelia's dad and Amelia's mom were both angry and heartbroken. What angered them was that Marshall had the audacity to come looking for Amelia after all this time. What broke their hearts was that Amelia had finally gotten rid of Marshall, only to be harassed by him again because Amelia's mom was hospitalized. Amelia's mom was so anxious that she wanted to leave the hospital immediately and return to the countryside, hoping to let Amelia return to the U.S. sooner. This startled Amelia, who quickly held back Amelia's mom. After much persuasion, she finally convinced Amelia's mom to abandon the idea. From Amelia's first day back in City Y, she knew that one day she would inevitably encounter Marshall. After all, City Y is the territory of the Quincy family. As long as Marshall wanted, he could have come after her the moment her plane landed. Amelia recalled that day when Marshall knocked on the taxi window, pleading with her from outside. She let out a long sigh in her heart. What good explanation could he possibly have? She had written everything that needed to be said and done clearly on that piece of paper. If he could understand it, he shouldn't have come looking for her. But Marshall had finally managed to see her again. How could he possibly give up so easily? He had so much to say to her. He wants to clarify everything between him and Diana. He doesn't love Diana. He only wants Amelia. But Amelia has been avoiding him since that day. He waited for several days in front of Amelia's mom's hospital room, only to receive cold stares from Amelia's dad and Amelia's mom, along with pointing fingers from others. He didn't even catch Amelia a glimpse of her shadow. That night, after waiting late into the night again, Marshall still didn't see Amelia appear. He clenched his hands and was about to stand up to leave when a slender figure slowly approached from the end of the corridor. Marshall's dimmed eyes instantly lit up. Amelia. Amelia stood still, staring coldly at the person before her. Then she walked straight past him and closed the hospital room door. This morning Amelia's mom was transferred to another room, but some belongings were left in the original one. Amelia had planned to come back late at night to retrieve them, never expecting him to still be waiting there. Only when the sound of the door closing echoed, Marshall finally snapped out of it and hurriedly knocked on the hospital room door that Amelia had shut. "Amelia, I know you're listening. Please, just hear me out, okay? I didn't mean to keep this from you. She took advantage when I was drunk and got into my bed. I wanted to deal with her right then, but my parents called pressuring us about having children. I can't bear to see you suffer, so I just..." The words that followed might have Marshall felt too awkward to say, as the last few sentences remained unspoken, yet both understood. Just a door apart, Amelia leaned against it, her eyes filled with sarcasm. If he couldn't bear to see her give birth, how could he bear to see her in pain? The pain in the heart hurts far more than physical pain. The day she found out about his affair, the heartache nearly took her breath away. Under his meticulous care, she had rarely needed to visit the hospital, but that day, she suffered from respiratory alkalosis due to overwhelming grief and nearly didn't survive the operating table. And what was he doing at that time? He was in Diana's bed. Moreover, he had many better ways to solve these problems. Yet he chose the most awkward one. Even if he had Diana paid off with money at the time, after all, she was still a woman he had slept with. Given his possessiveness, wouldn't he still end up secretly seeking out Diana behind his back later? The most fundamental solution would have been to return directly to the master bedroom after getting drunk that day. In fact, long before Diana climbed into his bed, his attitude toward Diana had gradually become strange. In the past, his lips would only utter her name among women, but gradually, Diana's name began to appear more frequently. Looking back now, Diana's initiative to climb into his bed merely gave him a legitimate excuse to cheat. Amelia closed her eyes in pain, ignoring Marshall's pleading outside the door, refusing to respond. The hour hand of the wall clock had circled several times, yet the person outside was still pleading with her desperately. It seemed he wouldn't relent unless she gave him a definitive answer. Marshall's intermittent voice not only agitated Amelia, but also disturbed the neighboring patients, making it impossible for them to sleep. The person next door had initially intended to come out and scold them. Upon seeing Marshall's face, the words that were about to be spoken were swallowed back. In the end, The hospital room door was closed resentfully. Marshall then turned his head. Just as he was about to continue speaking, the tightly shut hospital room door was suddenly opened from inside. Amelia, the joyful smile on his face froze instantly when he saw Amelia's icy gaze. Marshall, perhaps because Amelia had spent some time abroad, her accent had become somewhat peculiar, her voice, once gentle, had now turned cold and distant. I've already made myself clear that day. You keep saying you love me, but you only slept with Diana to stop me from getting pregnant. But every time after that, wasn't it you who initiated it? I've seen every single one of your encounters, even heard them. Amelia clenched her palms tightly, even though so much time had passed, yet when she recalled Marshall and Diana entangled together, she still couldn't accept it, still felt sickened, once tainted. Always tainted. Stop making excuses for yourself. Our relationship ended the day you cheated. Amelia averted her gaze and no longer looked at him, holding the items in her hand as she prepared to leave, but Marshall panicked and reached out to grab her hand. No, it's not like that. I'm not dirty, Amelia. If you think I'm dirty, I'll go wash myself clean right away. Don't say these breakup words to me, okay? Amelia forcefully pulled her restrained hand away, smiling mockingly. Then you shouldn't have cheated in the first place either. He was the one she fell in love with at first sight, the one she could rely on the most, the one she entrusted her life to, yet he had to cheat. Marshall, why did you cheat? Why did you have to fool around with another woman in bed every time I needed you? How can you say you love me without blushing or feeling guilty after cheating with another woman? Amelia, her voice remained calm, yet it transformed into the sharpest dagger, piercing straight into his heart. Marshall, cornered by her relentless approach, he finally collided with the wall with a thud, leaving him with no escape. Marshall, his face drained completely of color, he opened his mouth, only to find himself unable to say anything. Amelia abruptly withdrew her body, the mocking smile at the corner of her lips also disappearing. You can't even answer such a basic question for me. What else can you explain, Marshall, if possible? I'd rather have never met you, that way she wouldn't have been hurt by him time and again, nor suffered for so long. Amelia looked at the man before her, his eyes filled with anguish. He offered many explanations, yet those words seemed utterly feeble in the face of his infidelity. Apart from adding a few jokes, it serves no other purpose. Amelia gazed at him quietly, her eyes completely unreadable. Only after Marshall finished explaining did she speak softly. Are you done explaining? Marshall paused, then quickly nodded, looking at her with visible tension, like a child awaiting the outcome of their punishment. Unfortunately, Amelia didn't give him any response. She had already wasted too much time with him. If she didn't return soon, Amelia's dad, Amelia's mom, would surely worry. Amelia turned and left, leaving only these words behind. Let's not meet again. As the words faded, Marshall collapsed to the ground, watching her retreating figure in despair. Did she really hate him that much, not willing to give him even a single chance? Heh. After a long while, a bitter smile escaped the corner of his lips. Perhaps Amelia's words had taken effect, as she didn't catch a glimpse of Marshall in the following days, since Amelia's mom recovered and was discharged from the hospital. Amelia had Amelia's dad and Amelia's mom stay in the courtyard house. She said she would take them around City Y before returning to the countryside. On this day, after Amelia's dad and Amelia's mom took their afternoon nap, Amelia finally prepared to go out for a stroll. As soon as she opened the door, she saw the former butler and servants from the villa standing at the entrance. Seeing Amelia come out, several sisters-in-law quickly surrounded her. Oh, Miss Amelia. We heard you returned to the country and wanted to come see you. Heard. Amelia's return to the country was known to hardly anyone except Marshall. She concealed the fleeting coldness in her eyes and invited them inside to sit. However, the butler and several servants repeatedly waved their hands, choosing to stand at the door to explain their purpose. Back then, after Amelia left, the gifts she had given them were returned to Marshall, but within a few days, Marshall bought them new gifts again. They said it was to express gratitude for their care of Amelia over the years. After all, they had received Marshall's gifts, so they still needed to show some appreciation. So they thought to persuade her, since they had once been husband and wife after all. Marshall now deeply realizes his mistake. Hope Amelia can also give Marshall a chance to make amends. These days, seeing Marshall in such a despondent state, they couldn't bear it either. Amelia found it laughable in her heart. Marshall, seeing that he couldn't manage on his own, brought others to persuade her. She also understood they meant well and simply smiled without saying a word. The butler and several servants, seeing this, could say no more and simply exchanged a few words with Amelia before leaving. After Marshall's interference, Amelia lost all desire to go out, so she closed the door and returned to her room for an afternoon nap. This nap, Amelia slept extremely restlessly during those 3 months abroad. She hadn't dreamed of Marshall even once, yet today, she dreamed of him again, and the scene was actually at their wedding. In the dream, Marshall was kneeling on one knee. He still held the wedding ring he had carved with his own hands, gazing affectionately at the girl in white before him. "Amelia, will you marry me? I will be loyal to you, love you, and accompany you for the rest of my life, never betray you." Finally, the girl in front of him moved slightly, revealing that delicate and unfamiliar face. That wasn't her, but Diana, yet Marshall acted as if he didn't recognize Diana, still gazing at her with that same expression. Just as Diana was about to speak, Amelia suddenly woke from her dream. She stared blankly out the window, feeling it had been a very strange dream. "Knock knock, Amelia, are you awake?" Amelia's mom's voice suddenly came from outside the door. Amelia patted her face and quickly responded, "I'm up, Auntie." Amelia's mom then pushed the door open and handed her the invitation in her hand, saying it was sent by a friend of hers. Amelia suddenly remembered running into an old friend shortly after returning home and casually chatting for a while. When they parted ways, the friend even asked for her address, saying they'd send their wedding invitation in a few days. Amelia thanked them and accepted it. Upon opening the letter, she found it was indeed the wedding invitation from her dear friend. After all, they were longtime friends. Amelia got up early the next day to go shopping for a gift. Just as I reached the second floor, I suddenly saw a large crowd of people approaching from the opposite direction. While walking towards Amelia, they were making way for pedestrians. She quickly sidestepped into a nearby store to let the group pass by. As the crowd passed in front of her, she suddenly felt something and glanced towards them. The next moment, her eyes widened in shock. Is that Diana? If Diana used to resemble a delicate, blooming flower, now she looks like an elderly woman in her twilight years. She has become so thin that only bones remain, yet her belly is swollen to an enormous size. The whole person looks lifeless. Not only Amelia was shocked by Diana's current appearance, but even the passers-by around her couldn't help but whisper, "Is that Diana? Am I seeing right? How did she end up like this? Doesn't the Quincy family feed her?" Someone nearby sneered. "Who said they're not giving? I heard from my sister who works at the Quincy household that the Quincys are practically spoon-feeding her now. Too bad she's done so many bad things. She has no luck at all, vomiting whatever she eats." On top of that, after Marshall found out she was pregnant again, he's been tormenting her daily. If it weren't for Marshall's mom keeping watch, the baby would have been gone long ago. Now seeing how wretched she is, the Quincy family finally let her out for some fresh air. Amelia suppressed the complex emotions in her eyes and walked toward another store. Everyone thought Diana would live a good life after being released from prison by the Quincy family. But now it seems that's not the case. Even when going out to relax, she has someone watching her 24/7, as if she's on parole. It's a pity she wouldn't show mercy to Diana, as all of this now was brought upon Diana by her own actions. Amelia didn't dwell on it further, focusing her attention on the task of selecting a gift. On the day of her friend's wedding, the venue was now adorned with an exceptionally warm and cozy atmosphere. Amelia watched the tearful kiss of the newlyweds, her eyes still slightly reddening at the corners. "I sincerely hope my friend can be excited." At that moment, a large hand handed her a handkerchief, and she followed the arm with her gaze. At first glance, she saw Marshall. The next second, the smile that had just been on her lips instantly disappeared. The ceremony had just concluded. Amelia didn't even stay for the meal. After asking someone nearby to relay a message to her friend, she immediately stood up and headed for the door. Only then did she remember that the bride today was not only her close friend but also Marshall's college classmate. Marshall watched her leave and, without hesitation, quickly got up to follow her. "Amelia." Marshall grabbed Amelia's hand and pinned her against the wall. "Amelia, I can now answer the question you asked last time. At that time, I only wanted to spare you the pain of childbirth, so I had Diana bear the child for us. I treated her well only because I was afraid something might happen to her child. Since you don't like Diana, don't like this child, shall I get rid of them both for you?" After saying all this, he looked at her with hopeful expectation. as if with just her nod, he could immediately dispose of Diana and the child in her womb. Amelia looked at the person before her, her eyes tinged with disappointment. He said so much, yet he placed all the blame for the affair on her, or was it because he felt sorry for her giving birth, so he turned to Diana to have a child? To this day, he still thinks she left him because of Diana. Seeing that she didn't respond, he assumed she had agreed. The mere thought that as long as he got rid of Diana and the child in her womb, Amelia would return to him, he grew increasingly excited, even feeling an irresistible urge to kiss her, slap. Before he could lean in for the kiss, Amelia's slap landed on his face first. Marshall, have you lost your mind? Amelia only realized it at this moment. Marshall never once considered that the reason for this failed marriage might lie with himself. He even naively believed that as long as the problems were resolved, she would return to him, yet clearly, the biggest problem stemmed from him. The thought of that former Marshall now about to harm 2 lives filled her words with disappointment. How did you become like this? Why don't you consider whether it might be your own fault? Marshall covered his slapped cheek, staring blankly for a long moment before finally forcing a bitter smile. Yes, I've gone mad every single day since you left. I've been having nightmares. In my dreams, you always leave me in different ways, abandoning me. I'm going crazy from these nightmares. Now, as long as I can win you back, I'll try any method. After speaking, he no longer looked at her, turned around, and disappeared into the heavy rain. Marshall, no matter Amelia how loudly she called, he didn't stop his steps. Madman. But before Marshall could act, Diana went into premature labor again. The baby was immediately placed in an incubator after birth, yet within 3 days, the child still stopped breathing, sent Diana to the hospital. Marshall's mom gazed at the lifeless child, a flicker of pity flashing in her eyes. Truly a child without fortune. Seeing Diana was of no use, Marshall's mom withdrew all the caregivers assigned to Diana, leaving only the words, "Take the money and disappear as far as you can." Soon the hospital room became empty. Diana, clutching the bank card, finally couldn't hold back her sobs. Gone, all gone. Home didn't want her, Marshall didn't want her. Even the child she struggled for 3 days and 3 nights to give birth to has abandoned her. She broke down in tears, but not a single person came to comfort or pity her. The passing nurse outside heard Diana's heart-wrenching and desperate cries, only to silently roll her eyes. But before the nurse could finish rolling her eyes, a tall figure suddenly appeared before her. The nurse was so frightened that she quickly bowed and left. "Good day, Mr. Joe." Marshall ignored the nurse completely and stood directly in front of Diana's hospital room. Only when the crying inside gradually subsided did he push the door open and enter. The same room, the same 2 people. Diana looked at him, her eyes first showing a moment of shock, then instantly turning to hatred. "Marshall, are you satisfied now? I became like this all because of you. I have nothing left now." Looking at Diana's ferocious face, Marshall let out a cold laugh. "Satisfied? I still think it's too light." The mere thought of him being played like a fool by such a woman, causing Amelia to leave him. A surge of rage suddenly flared up in his heart. He strode forward, gripping her chin with one hand, his voice as cold as winter. "You should be grateful this child of yours didn't survive, otherwise you should have left with it." Diana's eyes, once filled with hatred, were now overwhelmed by fear. During her stay at Quincy's house while pregnant, she came to clearly understand Marshall's methods. Even though Marshall's mom had people guarding her around the clock, Marshall's men still found ways to sneak in and frame her. If she hadn't been lucky, she might have died quietly long ago. Feeling the trembling of the person in his hands, Marshall darkened his gaze. If it weren't for Amelia disliking his wrongdoing, Diana wouldn't have survived until now. Fortunately, the child in her belly wasn't saved, and he was spared one less trouble. Marshall pushed her away in disgust, casually wiping his hands with a handkerchief. "Get as far away from me as possible from now on. If I ever see you again, you'll face worse than this." After leaving the warning, Marshall slammed the ward door shut with a bang. That vicious warning made Diana shiver involuntarily. The blanket in her hand was gradually clenched tighter. On the other side of City Y, Amelia reluctantly saw Amelia's dad and Amelia's mom off onto the special car returning home. She then headed towards the courtyard house. Now Amelia had resolved the most important matter in the country, and it was time for her to return to the U.S. After all, staying here would only bring unnecessary troubles and nothing else. With this thought, she quickened her steps home. She thought about taking advantage of the early hour to return the rented courtyard house to the elderly neighbor. What? You're saying someone has already bought this house and given it to me? Amelia widened her eyes instantly after hearing the old neighbor's words. The old man lay in the rocking chair, fanning himself with a palm leaf fan as he handed her the property purchase documents. Look, your name is even on here. Amelia suspiciously took the papers and immediately saw her name glaringly printed in the corner of the document. Seeing the familiar handwriting, she frowned, just as she was about to say something. She saw the old man pointing at the door with his palm leaf fan. Look, that's the person who bought the house for you. She raised her eyes and saw a figure standing in the doorway, backlit, gazing at her with the same tenderness as years ago. Amelia, Marshall. What do you mean by this? Amelia thanked the elderly man while pulling Marshall outside the door. I don't need you to do this at all. Marshall flashed a pained look in his eyes and tried to embrace her, but she broke free from his grasp. Amelia, that's my compensation for you. I've already resolved the biggest issue between us, Diana. The child is gone, and she'll never bother us again, so can you give me another chance? Amelia shook her head. Opportunity, Marshall, I did consider giving you a chance. Marshall's eyes instantly lit up, only to dim again when she spoke her next words. If you had entered the master bedroom that day, or if you had confessed everything to me the next day, maybe there's still a chance for us. But how did you do it? Holding Diana in every corner of the house, even making wild love right beside her. That day, when you were with her on the rooftop, I realized even your brothers knew about your affair. She tucked her cold hands into her pockets and let out a soft sigh. At that moment, I wondered, am I the only fool in this world? Marshall clenched the hand hanging at his side slightly as he heard her continue. To the point where everyone was willing to help you keep it from me. Amelia smiled. So to punish you, I specifically demanded all the shares under your name on the day of the birthday banquet. Right now, I don't lack this courtyard house at all. Even if you bought it for me, it would be useless. As soon as she finished speaking and was about to leave, the next moment she was tightly embraced in a warm hug. She lowered her gaze to the hands encircling her waist and was about to pull them away. The person behind her spoke with a tremble. Amelia, I'm sorry. Amelia's words finally woke him up. And he was finally willing to face the mistakes he had made. Since he was wrong, he would apologize and make amends. Amelia, hoping Amelia would forgive him and come back, but his apology was too late for Amelia. His apology could have been said the day after he slept with Diana, or say it when she still harbored illusions about him, but just not when she has completely given up on him. Amelia remained silent for a long time before pulling his hand away and leaving directly. Amelia. He painfully stopped her and asked why she wouldn't give him a chance. From the first day he saw Amelia again, he had been trying to win her back. No matter how he explained or what he did, she remained unmoved. You clearly loved me so much before. Why can't you give me another chance? If you dislike the traces of Diana living in the house, I'll sell it. If you find the gifts I gave you before unpleasant, I'll buy you new ones. If you think I'm dirty, I'll take more showers. Then what if it's your heart that's dirty? Amelia suddenly spoke up, only to find him unable to respond. She smiled, didn't glance at him again, and left him standing alone where he was. The next day, Amelia started packing her bags, preparing to return to the United States. Originally, she had planned to bring Amelia's mom to the United States with her. But Amelia's mom had spent their entire lives in the countryside and couldn't bear to leave the land. See this? Amelia said no more. As she left, she secretly slipped a bank card under their pillows when Amelia's mom weren't looking. Next, she arranged to meet with her friends back home for a meal. During the gathering, the thought of her leaving again filled her friend with sadness. With you leaving like this, who knows when we'll meet again? When we get the chance in the future, we'll come visit you in America. Amelia nodded and exchanged addresses with her friends so they could visit her in the U.S. Later, everyone kept drinking glass after glass of alcohol while Amelia chatted with them. Amelia was about to call the waiter to refill her tea after finishing the last sip in her cup. Just then, a tipsy friend waved his hand and said he would get her more tea himself. Everyone quickly urged him to sit down, but the man refused to listen and instead picked up the teapot and walked out of the private room. Before long, the sound of a heated argument could be heard from outside. The people in the private room exchanged glances and rushed out immediately. They saw their friend from earlier pushing and shoving with a few drunk people from the opposite side. Amelia felt her heart tighten and quickly moved with her friend to intervene in the fight. At that moment, someone from the opposite side picked up a bottle from somewhere and swung it at her head. Amelia. A panicked voice suddenly came from Amelia's overhead. The next second, she was securely held in the arms of Marshall, who had rushed over. Bang! The wine bottle shattered instantly, fragments falling to the ground along with the blood from his head. The entire restaurant fell silent in an instant. Murder, screams and shouts erupted into chaos. Marshall couldn't care about anything else, only frantically checking Amelia from head to toe. Only after confirming she was unharmed did he let out a sigh of relief. Amelia watched his anxious demeanor coldly and said, "Marshall, you didn't need to block for me. I would have dodged it myself." During those 6 months abroad, she had specifically taken combat training to protect herself. If he hadn't been there just now, she would have already taken that person down. Marshall's hands gripping her shoulders suddenly slipped away. She was showing him that even without him, she could live just fine, unlike him, who went completely crazy without her, hiding at home drinking all day. Just as he was about to say something, the restaurant manager, upon hearing the news, hurried over with a group of people. While directing someone to Marshall for emergency wound treatment, the manager was also busy handling the chaos at the scene, but Marshall stood motionless in place, even reaching out to grab Amelia's hand. Amelia pushed his hand away directly and insisted on helping her friends take the heavily intoxicated person to the hospital. But one friend politely declined her offer, explaining that the dinner was originally meant as a farewell gathering for her. No one had expected things to turn out like this. They already felt guilty enough. How could they possibly trouble her further? With that, the friend nudged her to go back early and pack her luggage. Amelia couldn't say anything more, so she turned and walked outside. Marshall had been watching her from the side. When he heard her friend tell her to go home early to pack, his heart suddenly panicked, and he grabbed her hand. "Amelia, where are you packing your bags to go this time?" Marshall's forehead wound had been treated, leaving only a gruesome gash. Combined with the panicked eyes beneath the injury, he appeared both pitiful and ridiculous. Amelia did not answer, only trying to withdraw her hand from his grip. But no matter how hard she struggled, she couldn't break free. Instead, he pulled her into his embrace. "Tell me, where exactly are you going?" Marshall's voice trembled, but Amelia remained cold and indifferent. Amelia finally looked up at the person before her, speaking with utter indifference. "Where I go? What business is it of yours?" Seizing the moment Marshall was stunned, she shook off his hand and strode toward the door. "Amelia." Marshall was about to chase after her when suddenly a tremendous force slammed into him. Bang! Amelia whirled around, staring in horror at the scene before her. Ever since Marshall was disabled in a car accident, he had become lifeless and gloomy. All day long, he would clutch the wedding photo of him and Amelia, endlessly calling out her name. Unable to bear the sight, everyone came to persuade Amelia, after all, they were once husband and wife, she should at least go see him. But every time, Amelia firmly refused. What was there even to see? Her relationship with Marshall had long been over. In the end, everyone could only sigh and leave. On this day, Amelia once again saw off someone who had come to persuade her to visit Marshall in the hospital. Just as she was about to close the door, a middle-aged woman's voice suddenly called out from a distance. "Wait a moment." Amelia looked up and saw Marshall's mom standing before her, eyes filled with the weariness of time. A steaming cup of tea was Amelia handed to Marshall's mom. Marshall's mom thanked her as she accepted it, taking a sip before explaining the purpose of her visit, still hoping Amelia could go to the hospital to see Marshall. Seeing Marshall's mom with a trace of pleading in her eyes, Amelia momentarily froze. From the first day of marriage, Marshall's mom had intensely disliked her. No matter what she did, Marshall's mom would always find fault, her gaze forever icy toward her. This was the first time she had seen Marshall's mom with such an expression in her eyes. Amelia tightened her grip on the teacup and still uttered an apology. "Our bond as husband and wife has come to an end. Not hating him is already the biggest concession I can make now." Marshall's mom, after hearing her rejection, she seemed to age another year, but the thought of her son confined to a wheelchair, Marshall's mom still wanted to make one last effort. After all, you were husband and wife for 5 years, he loved you so much, did so many reckless things for you. Amelia let out a light chuckle. "What does it matter how much he loved me? He still cheated in the end. Not only did he hide it from me, but his friends kept it from me too. Perhaps even you've been keeping it from me." Back then, Diana fainted at Amelia's birthday party due to pregnancy, causing quite a stir. She refused to believe Marshall's mom was unaware of it. Sure enough, Marshall's mom's expression froze momentarily. Ever since Marshall and Amelia got married, Marshall's mom had been urging them to have a child soon. One couldn't have children due to health issues, while the other chose not to for the sake of his wife's well-being. This infuriated Marshall's mom, who felt extremely uncomfortable whenever she saw Amelia, naturally never treating her kindly. So when she learned Diana was pregnant, Marshall's mom had long cast aside all rules and propriety. She also forgot that infidelity was in the Quincy family considered utterly shameful. Even if Marshall's dad spent all day giving Marshall's mom the cold shoulder over this, even if Amelia was secretly heartbroken about it all day, Marshall's mom didn't care at all. After all, nothing was more important than holding her grandchild. Amelia saw Marshall's mom react like this, and a hint of mockery flashed in her eyes, so she even supports her own son's infidelity. Why bother trying to persuade her? Marshall, when she's already utterly disappointed and heartbroken, Mrs. Joe, I hope you can tell him when you go back, he's not only tormenting himself, but also tormenting me. Does he think the harm he's caused me before wasn't enough? Does he have to drive me to death? After saying this, she didn't even look at Marshall's mom's reaction and made a gesture to see her out. Marshall's mom had no choice but to get up and leave hospital. Seeing Marshall's mom standing alone with no one behind her, Marshall's last glimmer of light in his eyes completely vanished. He said nothing, just waved his hand to let Marshall's mom leave. He picked up the wedding photo in his hand, tears of regret dripping onto Amelia's radiant, smiling face. In truth, he had known from the very beginning that if he was unwilling, Diana never even had a chance to climb into his bed, yet he kept deluding himself, believing his actions were solely out of reluctance Amelia to bear children. But his heart fell for Diana through repeated infidelities. How ironic, the same man who once solemnly vowed to Amelia at their wedding, someone who says they will love, cherish, and stand by her for the rest of their life, never betraying her, one who swears to be struck by lightning if they ever love another, one who claims they'll only ever Amelia one woman, yet ultimately betrayed their vow. He set down the photograph, his lifeless eyes flickering before finally settling on the fruit knife beside him. That day Amelia asked him, what if the heart gets dirty? Now he could finally answer her, that is to kill it. Ah, someone's dead. The night shift nurse screamed in panic upon witnessing the bloody scene in the hospital room. From a distance, Marshall's mom heard the nurse's scream, and the thermos in her hand suddenly fell to the ground. She frantically pushed past the nurse frozen in the doorway. After seeing the scene in the room clearly, her legs gave way, and she instantly collapsed to her knees. In the hospital room, Marshall lay on the bed as usual, and a fruit knife was deeply embedded in his heart. Upon learning Marshall's death, Amelia stood frozen in place for a long time, until a tear slid down from the corner of her eye. She finally snapped out of it. Reaching out to wipe away that tear, she said nothing, just picked up her suitcase and walked out the door. After boarding the plane, Amelia took one last look outside through the window. City, why this place? She will never come back in this lifetime.